So the really cool
Mayor Beatty, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, good.
To order. Okay. I call this work session to order. We have Jennifer Gridley and Tessie Prentice talking about public work standards.
Thank you, Council. Yeah, we are here to talk about a public works standards update. The engineering team has been working really hard and coordinating with Public Works. And Tessie here has done a big lift of that. So thank you so much, Tessie, for all of your work in getting this moving forward. So we've got some technical amendments that we would like to present and some adjustments to these public works standards that we want council to understand what we're proposing. So right now we're in a 30-day public review period. We have posted copies at City Hall, Johnson Creek Building, Leading Library, and electronically on the website. So we're accepting comments all the way till December 30th?
Yeah, the end of December.
End of December. In which case we hope to then come back to council in beginning of January and adopt these updates. So part of the first update was looking at our Division 1. And our Division 1 is kind of some general construction that we were implementing, but they conflicted with our general conditions for construction that's part of our procurement rules. It's an attachment to our procurement rules. So we just made some updates to make sure we were inconsistent with those and that we weren't overlapping in certain areas. So the big one is incorporating the public area requirements. So this is this lovely document, and it is our downtown and riverfront plan, and it is a public area requirements. This was adopted by council September 19th, 2000. So just remember how long ago that was. And this was done by ordinance. So it's governing right now. And so one of the first things that comes up is it's very detailed. It is extremely detailed to the point where it's asking for circulation requirements here. That's up on the screen. And as you can see, our building is right next to what it's proposing is a new street and intersection. And at this point, we have changed. The city has changed, and there's no real desire to actually put in a signal across the way and a street through there and vacate Scott Street. So this is just some of the items that are outdated in this document that we hopefully want to move forward and bring a new plan. Here's another one, creation of pathways and riverfront access. This plan does not include the trolley trail, doesn't even talk about it. Pathways adjacent to the railroad tracks is now our max line, and we're not gonna put a path along that way. The transit connection is on Jackson Street instead of Harrison. It does not include Monroe Street Greenway. The access pathway between Monroe Street and Jefferson Street that they propose in this document goes right through a building. So there's things here that this plan is telling us, hey, we should be doing, but yet we have changed and we have adopted. The bikeway and transit route documents, once again, it doesn't talk about the 17th trolley trail. Shared lanes on Main Street. We have all the streets on Main Street and 21st are actually shared use paths. And then, of course, the transit center on Jackson Street that we had put in. This even talks about on-street parking. Well, we've got a different plan that's in place, and that's been superseded by Traffic Regulation 502. So lots of details in here, but we're really not utilizing some of these details. We've adapted and we've changed. Street trees. We have an entire street code with a new street list. 5 of these species are not even in our new approved street tree list. That's concerning for me because now I want to do some more work on Main Street. And I've got a plan that says you must do this. But then I've got another plan that says, a tree code that says these are the actual approved. So what is superseding here? Streetlights. This plan takes very detailed what the street lights should look like. However, the city requirements have been adopted in Public Works since 2007. Streetlights are required, by Portland General Electric. Fixtures will be on their approved list. So we're kind of at the whim of PGE in certain situations. We also moved to LED lights. That's not in this plan or talks about that option. Classifications of right-of-way widths. This definitely has some recommendations or some requirements it's stating. However, our transportation system plan is what been driving our widths there and what we should be utilizing for actual standard right-of-way requirements. Street sections, the major thing we have taken away from this is we put in all of the street sections that they have talked about in this document in our public works standards. So this table outlines all of those requirements, how wide we're going to do sidewalks, things like that. Those are still coming in and we're still utilizing that from this plan. So that part is not changed. So we're still bringing in that element. This was also actually started to be incorporated in 2019. So the last update, we had already moved in those public street sections. Street design details some of them are, I can't even read this. Mid-block parking is actually by our Milwaukie Municipal Code. Corner radius is in our Public Works Standards section 5. Curb and gutter details, detail 516. The brick pavers to concrete street transition is not really available since it's for Main Street Plaza between Monroe and Jefferson, but that's not being built. There's a building there at the time. Asphalt street to concrete crosswalk transitions is in detail 519. So we're still maintaining the special details that are called out when they're applicable. And then sidewalk design details are also, we pulled in, so 520, 521, they were updated to meet ADA standards. So since this plan was adopted, ADA standards have changed. Sidewalk scoring and tree well details are in 518, A, B, and C. The sidewalks in McLaughlin actually follow Oregon standard drawings to meet ODOT requirements, because that's not our right-of-way. And then tree planting details is 513. It's been updated by the city's urban forester to meet the new tree code requirements and what trees need to survive in an urban environment. Here's our street light design details. Yes, they're decorative, so that part is what we're maintaining from the PARs. But now they're all LED lights. And we're kind of at the beck and whim of PGE of what they can provide as well as they maintain those. Street furniture. This plan tells you exactly who you can even buy the furniture from. They no longer are in business, or they're no longer selling the furnishings. So we've updated this Victorian style bench. It's in the Public Works section 5. The notes to the benches is approved by the city engineer and lists 3 bench options at the moment. The trash can. The place that's called out in here, it's not available anymore. So we've updated it. And Public Works staff requested that the ash trap not be included with the dome lid option. They prefer, it's more of a hassle for them.
Maintenance issue.
Bollards and fountains are described in there. It's a decorative. It also isn't available anymore per this document. So we found a new location, something similar that looks nice. It can be ordered over and over. Tree grades have been updated, especially for new tree wells and different requirements that we're looking for, and to help overall better health of the tree. And then the bike facilities are in section 5. So section 5 is our street section, just in general. All the street infrastructure is there. So city staff requested changes. This is the overall gathering of information. There was 22 text change requests, 18 were made. 3 not made due to other changes because, and 1 because more information needed. So staff definitely went through all comments, everything that came in. 19 detail changes requests, 6 changes were made. The other 13th were not because they were actually already included in the Public Works standards, and we were able to point them to where those were. So lots of work has gone to look at all changes. It looks like a lot because there's a lot of redlining, but really it was more updating how it looked and formatting and moving things so it flowed a little bit better within the document. So I'm proposing in January to come to council and do 2 actions. 1, I want to take this document and I'm hoping I can do a resolution. We're still working on what's the appropriate application, but say, hey, this has now been moved to the Public Works standards, or we be updating it and maintaining those elements. So then the Public Works standards would then be the governing item here. Then number 2 would be adopting these Public Works standards as this is our latest and greatest. We would start from there, any amendments after this date. What are your thoughts?
I actually had a question about the trash receptacles. And I'm curious because, with our climate action plan, how come we don't have recycling receptacles next to the trash cans? Because I feel like right now, if you're in downtown and you're drinking a soda can or anything that's recyclable, you got to throw them in the trash. So
It's not in the document.
It's required to put the other trash cans in. And that's something that can be changed.
yeah, that's why I'm curious. Like, is that something that
Yeah.
you can be? So it can be done then.
It would involve working with a contract with the garbage company that comes and collects the garbage.
Right.
But at the moment, the garbage cans are only in downtown, is what's governed on those. So the rest of the city doesn't have city-owned garbage cans. So it would be strictly in the downtown core. The parks have a different garbage can also. So it's just one that's the one they have parts for. So the stocking at Public Works, they keep spare parts for that particular garbage can. It's not impossible to change. It would just be a fine one that, and then could be approved. It can be used at any time once the PARS is gone, to substitute in as a request because it's city engineer's approval.
Yeah, it'd be great, just because a lot of the, these events that we hold downtown.
Yeah, why aren't we throwing this in the trash?
Especially when we're promoting climate action and, something as simple as recycling, I think it would be a good idea to at least take a look at.
Yeah, I think to look at that, because one of the issues I found is a lot of people throw them in the wrong one, and so then the garbage company usually just throws it all in the garbage regardless of which bin it was placed in, which is unfortunate, but unless it's sorted properly. I think for our events, usually they put a temporary one out there for actual activities for recycling, or they could have events. Those are most likely to be not cross-contaminated as much as other, because these are outdoor too, so it gets wet.
Yeah. Thank you.
This is, important but somewhat tedious work. I'm sure you probably broke the track changes function on your computers doing this. So will the public area requirements document still exist?
I think that's what we need to, it'll exist as a document, but do we want it to actually be functional as a requirement? If it's requirements, you're looking,
Well, don't get me wrong, I have no, burning desire that we have this document. I'm asking, do we need it at this point?
no, I've moved everything to the Public Works standards at this time.
Okay.
And, another, example is we put in South Downtown, and this document calls for closing the undercrossing. Well, we enhanced the undercrossing to better flow through there. So, no, it's been moved. All the elements we do want from this are in the Public Works standards.
I'm good.
Well, and I think the desire of Tessie and Jen over the last 8 months has been to make it so that we can actually get rid of that portion of it. The mayor has her hand up online.
Yeah, to me, I feel like we have some public works standards and some TSP things all mixed up in here. I think things like trash cans and ADA accessible and street trees, to me that all makes sense as being handled in the Public Works Standards document. But things like street alignments and where trails go, those were results of sometimes of the last TSP. Certainly of bigger planning processes like the Moving Forward Milwaukie, which was the big downtown process in about 2012. We also have, street allocations in the North Milwaukie Innovation Area Plan. I feel like those kind of things should really fall under the TSP and not the Public Works standards, I guess.
Which is correct.
Yeah, those weren't being added to the Public Works standards. Those are in the PARS. And I was just showing that that item is already covered in the TSP and it's in conflict with our PARS.
Okay, so you're not proposing to cross out which streets go through or which whatever in the Public Works standards?
Correct.
Okay. Great. The other thing is the street lights. Love them or hate them. I might have, if I were, the one picking them, I might have picked something different, but we now have them in about half of downtown, and so it seems like we need to try to be as consistent as we can be.
The Public Works standards, actually, Mayor Beatty, the Public Works standards state which lights style to go in there and to pick the one that most closely matches the description for the location to what is available on the PGE list. So rather than stating it will be this light with the acorn top, it's find the PGE acceptable light that most closely matches this description, and that is in the Public Works standards.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
And on the point that Councilor Kostravati brought up about the recycling, I thought that Wes has actually done a very clever and low-budget thing in the green space between Wes and the river that connects to the Island Station neighborhood, which is they have just hung buckets off of the trash can, and so that people could put their recyclables in there, because there are always people who are collecting those for the money. And so it's, nicer for them to not have to dig through the trash, and it's not a separate pickup. Well, I guess, I think they normally disappear, so they don't require second pickup by, the staff who are emptying the trash. So I just wanted to throw that out there I thought it was interesting. That's been in place for 3 or 4 years now. I don't know what their experience is in terms of mixing, because I do hear you on recycling. You go to so many big events like, music festivals in the summer and other things. They have all the recycling containers, and they're all, full of stuff that's not recyclable. So I do hear that concern. Anyway, that's 3.
Did you have something?
Yeah, a quick question. You had mentioned with the staff changes, it seems like a fairly low number, actually, considering the...
Since 2019, yeah. No, we do, yeah. No, we've been tracking them for multiple years of what the requests were and trying to incorporate, and there wasn't many changes, no.
So I guess what I'm wondering is, do these changes reflect things that are currently out of date, or the things that have potential to get out of date? Like, will we have to come back and do this in 5 years?
Oh, it will
and
probably
change more
come,
things?
and you things just happen, and so like small updates. I don't have to necessarily come back to council. The next update, I'm hoping, if it's a small change, we would do just a 30-day notice of what we changed, and then it would be in effect.
Okay. Well, so I'm wondering if there's language that we can put into the resolution that would allow staff to have the ability to, identify the governing documents, and that those documents might be relevant, and so then it would remove some of the confusion in the future?
It's already.
Oh, it's there already.
It is there already.
So for this document.
This is the only one that
For
still
that
exists,
one.
and it had reference. The biggest change was that it no longer references this document as some of the preceding documents.
So we're pulling this.
So that's probably one of the biggest changes. Other than that, it says follow state and federal requirements, the city code.
Yeah.
And it lists out everything that is to be followed, including this, and this is now removed in this update. And the reason we're here actually is we had told the council at the time the last time it was updated that the next update would come to council for approval.
Okay.
That's what normally it doesn't.
Okay.
In the code, it's written that it can have annual or technical amendments as needed based on the city engineer's discretion. And it's usually from comments or something changed. Usually a lot of it was the ADA requirements have been updated repeatedly, and PROAG is set to be finally approved. And so that's some of the stuff that it's incorporated into. It had been in 2019 also. So those things just happened, but we had said engineering had promised to bring it to council next time. And so this is next time.
I think the last update was 2007.
No, it was actually updated annually.
No, like from council, adopted from council.
Oh, it was only originally adopted from council. This is the second time Public Works has come, the standards have come to council.
But my big reason is that I want to move this, right? And so that's why I want to adopt it and have very transparent that that's what we're doing. And so council and anyone else who wants to make comments can.
Okay.
So any concerns? No?
That was really clear.
Okay, great.
I really appreciate it.
We will be back in January, the beginning, to move these forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next,
Good job.
In the audience.
we have
Yeah, whatever works.
the Kellogg Creek Update given by Neil Schulman from the North Clackamas Watershed Council.
Thank you, Councilor Nicodemus. I like the new setup. I had to had to stop myself from going to the old City Hall.
I still find myself doing that sometimes.
Yeah.
Found myself doing that today.
Thank you, sir.
Sometimes.
So I'm assuming this is appearing on your laptops, but this is really oh, there it is. Eventually I'll figure out how technology works. This is an update on the Kellogg Creek Restoration Community Enhancement Project, which I know for Councilor Massey, who got part of this update at our board meeting last week. Some of this will be old hat, and I know that Tessie has probably been boosting you. I want to start by saying that on a scale of 1 to 10, working with Tessie on this is somewhere about a 12 or 13.
She's amazing.
And really, you know, I consider myself a late comer to this project. You know, I came to the Watersheds Council in 2018. I know folks going back to have been working on this project for decades, and we are at a phenomenally exciting place where it's happening. And we ran into ODOT's crews out there today doing survey work in the rain, and from somebody like me who has done kind of conservation I used to work for a little bit on the Mount Hood National Forest and worked in wild and remote places, and I would much rather do conservation and river restoration in a place where we're across the street from a high school, and it is something that people can see and experience every day. So this to me is a wonderful project to be working on, and the city had been leading it long before I came on the scene. So thank you. Just a quick recap, and I know again, Councilor Massey and Mayor Beatty have been involved in this deeply, but just a quick recap. The goals of the project are Kellogg Dam, as you know, existed at least by 1852 when Oregon was a territory and Abraham Lincoln was a young congressman. It has because of where it sits, it blocks access to the entire watersheds for salmon, steelhead, lamprey, movement of cutthroat trout. That's about 15 miles. The picture that I showed on that initial screen was a photo of a coho salmon taken up in Upper Mount Scott Creek, upstream of Mount Talbert in Happy Valley. When Kellogg Dam is passable, which is about 4 or 5 days a year, they make it all the way up there. The goals of the project are provide that fish passage, removing Kellogg Dam and restoring the 17 acres of habitat and floodplain that is currently in the impoundment. That will also increase flood storage and provide access to nature-based recreation and education. And again, as a former conservation educator, it doesn't get better than being a block from Milwaukie High School and having Rao Middle School just upstream. The other part of it is obviously, if you walked over there today and saw the rain pouring through the fish ladder, the highway was built in 1934. The bridge is 89 years old. It's built on an earthen dam re-encased with concrete, and it is obviously not seismically invulnerable. So replacing that bridge with a seismically resilient modern bridge is part of the project, as is creating what has been on both the city's and our wish list for a long time, which is the bike pedestrian trail undercrossing that will link Milwaukie Bay to downtown Milwaukee and light rail and create an off-grade option for getting across 99E, especially as Milwaukie Bay Park gets developed and sees more use. And then creating interactive learning, scientific research, and student involvement opportunities with a project like this that is so visible and so accessible And that has already started. And really engaging the community throughout the process. Again, it's not often you get to restore a stream like this in a city center, and those opportunities are great. So that's the project kind of background. There's really 4 leadership entities that are managing this through the design process. The city is one of them. The other one is American Rivers. American Rivers does dam removal all the time. So for those of you who have not encountered April McEwen, who is the project manager, this is not a particularly complicated project for her. She looked at it and said, oh, there's no city water supply, there's no hydropower relicensing, okay. And then us, and then ODOT, which is the dam owner. Obviously, the project has received a lot of political support. We received some congressionally directed spending, and then the largest grant in NOAA fisheries history, which is the $15 million grant that is going to take the project to the beginnings of construction. Senator Merkley and Senator Wyden were instrumental in that. They've both been out to the site. They're both continuing to support the project, as has Councilor Lewis at Metro, and obviously now Representative Gamba is obviously still involved. And then that has also come along with a lot of partner support. So I think when I started working on this, we were hearing from the ODOT side that, hey, this wasn't really a priority for them, even though it was their #1 high priority fish passage barrier in the state. From a road standpoint, it was not their most important road. That has really turned around enormously. ODOT's fully invested in the project. We routinely have meetings where there's 20 some odd people from ODOT in the meeting hammering through whatever we need to, whether it's bathymetry or design. This picture that's on the left was Ryan Winsheimer, who's the Region 1 manager of ODOT, chose this project to highlight with the Oregon Transportation Commission in November. They are really starting to see that this is a way they can do things differently. They can bring in funding from other sources. The other good allies we have are the folks at NOAA Fisheries, and also, again, obviously American Rivers and U.S. Fish. And I think one of the things that is making this move forward fairly quickly on the nuts and bolts side is we engage the regulatory agencies really early. And so the folks who have to issue us permits or tell us what we can or can't do with the sediment are starting to develop a long history with the project and really see it as like, yeah, we want to kind of find a way to help make this happen and be able to say yes instead of, oh, you actually need to do this other thing. So hopefully that will help us when we get into kind of some of the permitting pathways as well. There's obviously a whole host of entities that are involved in this. On the technical advisory committee side, there's 2 tribes engaged. Obviously us, Metro, all the agencies related to transportation or fish and wildlife that you can probably imagine, and maybe some other ones. And again, that makes it a really interesting planning process, but because the project has so many community benefits as well as natural resources benefits, it's a pretty exciting collaborative approach. It's basically, one of the other things about this is it is happening basically on Uncle Sam's dime. So again, we've received the largest grant ever issued by NOAA Fisheries. There's also some funding from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and then on the private side, there's a little bit of money from the Resources Legacy Fund, which is based down in California as a private foundation, and an anonymous donor that I actually have no idea who they are. So, and we obviously know, the money that we have now will take us all the way through the full design of all elements and the beginnings of construction. So procurement, contracting, some of the longer lead items like the plants that will go in what is now the impoundment is something that's going to have to be done obviously ahead of time. And then I'll talk a little bit more about the kind of approach to construction itself. Where we are in the process is basically we are launching phase 2. It went into ODOT's contracting procurement process on Friday. The scope was done and kind of they pressed the go button, and it will soon appear on their procurement process. But basically, this is the full design of everything: the bridge, the trail underneath the bridge, the restoration components, the sediment management, the dewatering strategy will be a big technical component on how we approach that. And then from there, it goes into the construction procurement part of it, and then obviously construction and monitoring and maintenance. We are obviously hoping to get to construction 2026, 27. What's that?
We will get to
Yes. So that is kind of the simplified pathway, description. There's obviously lots of steps engaged in that. This is the conceptual design for the restoration component of it. And this is a high-level concept. So I want to make clear that this is not oh yeah, this side channel is going to go here. It's really a kind of description of what it could look like. But the long and short of it is there is a natural functioning stream that starts out as a single channel, and somewhere around where the current, where the old river valley starts to widen, which is a little bit upstream of the Milwaukie Presbyterian Church where our office is. That channel is allowed to spread out, form multiple channels with wetlands that allows, when we have weather like this and streams are really cranking, to spread out and reconnect to groundwater. That cools the water, it filters pollutants, it provides a lot of habitat for things like fish and ducks and frogs. And kind of becomes a connected wetland river system. And then it narrows into a couple of consolidated channels in the lower part of what is currently the impoundment, where it then because it has to pass through some of the urban infrastructure around the railroad trestle and the light rail and pedestrian bridge, and then go under a wider Highway 9090 bridge. Obviously, the city knew this was coming when it replaced the Milwaukie Bay Bridge and built a longer span. That was a critical element of foresight because we know we're going to fit. Obviously, folks were already thinking, and this was before my time, that we're going to need to have a stream and a trail under here at some point. So what will be happening in phase 2 is this really gets refined as we get more sediment information and as we get deeper into the design process. The design will address a couple of kind of the more complex elements that we all knew were coming. One of them is there's going to be obviously sediment has been accumulating behind Kellogg Dam since the 1850s, and that is probably the key regulatory issue, is how does that get managed. We have the initial results on the first round of sediment testing, but there is more to be done. And some of that will be a design element. We don't want a ton of soft sediment where the stream can just cut another steep canyon through really soft silt, because that then we'll lose that floodplain wetland reconnection. And at the same time, obviously, depending on what we get from the Army Corps of Engineers and the Portland Sediment Evaluation Team, they'll kind of tell us what we can do on site and what we can't. The other question that ODOT will be answering is the question of how making sure that basically the de-watering of the impoundment and turning it into a stream does not have any adverse impact on the railroad trestle. And one of the great things that ODOT has been able to bring to the table is they have a whole office of railroad liaison, and that agreement I understand is now signed.
Yep.
So
as of recently,
I heard that.
Last week.
I just heard about it.
Yeah. It just happened recently.
Yeah. And then the other detail, another thing that will happen in this next phase of design will be really figuring out what the recreational elements in the current impoundment should look like, access points and trails and connections to the trolley trail. Obviously, this process needs to talk to Coho Point and making sure that those designs are lining up together. So as far as what's next, so ODOT is running the procurement for the next phase. That does not mean ODOT gets to control everything about it. That was we had a lot of conversations about that in the early phases. But again, there's this 4-entity leadership team that includes us and the city and American Rivers. And the process of scoring and evaluating those proposals and any change to the scope of work has to be approved by all 4 entities, as well as having the sideboards on it from the NOAA Fisheries grant that's paying for it. That really does basically say, yeah, this is a restoration project. You don't just get to build a bridge and kind of go do your thing. And this basically includes, again, the full ODOT bridge design, the restoration design, the recreational components, the sediment characterization for design and permitting, and a sampling and analysis plan. We are going to be doing the full scale sediment testing in May. We need high water to do it, to get a big enough barge into the lower impoundment where it can move around, because we need a big barge to get a deep enough vibrocore to get down to the level of sediment depths. And then
Physics.
Oh, yes.
yeah, it's one of those annoying things. Like the upper impoundment was easy. People could just walk out there at low water, or they did some of it from our inflatable raft. But when we get into the deeper sediments between the dam and basically Kronberg, it gets more, the engineering is more complicated. The last thing we heard was they're going to close 9090 in the middle of the night and lower the barge off the side of the bridge.
And we're all gonna go watch.
Oh, yes.
Yes, it's done. Yeah.
It's going to be kind of exciting. There's a lot of just kind of nuts and bolts that are going to be still getting figured out how to get that testing done. And then ODOT all the permitting, all the railroad coordination, and the community engagement in this process. And we've been working a lot with the city and also with United Oregon about how do we make sure that we do a really robust community engagement process that brings in voices that often don't get heard in a lot of these processes. City leadership has been really strong throughout and will remain essential. This obviously is part of really continuing to make downtown Milwaukie a thriving, vibrant place with this amazing project that links all of the elements of downtown and light rail and the high school and the parks and the trails and Milwaukee Bay. Obviously, the city owns most of the lake bed, and that is going to be, I think, a place that is going to be really exciting to see. Obviously, this is going to touch and already touches a lot of different elements of the city. It involves public works and the city engineer and natural resources and planning and Coho Point and the sewer pipe that runs under the impoundment and government relations and the community engagement side. And that is going to be a lot of internal coordination. That's always going to be really important to make sure that all of those things are thought through. And then the city's role as a public champion and showing the visible leadership of this project and articulating the benefits. Again, projects like this, as soon as you say dam removal, people think you're talking about just the environment. And I love the environment as much as anybody, but I also see so many benefits in this to the kids who go to the high school, the people who work in Milwaukie, that it is, the people who want a tree to hang out under during the next heat dome. All of those benefits are really important, if not more so. And that is my quick presentation, we will need some more money when we get to construction. I've been in some conversations with Merkley's office. We're definitely starting to look at what would a congressional appropriation look like. We're obviously tracking all the Inflation Reduction Act and Infrastructure Act opportunities as well, and obviously looking toward things like on the state level, like a 2025 state transportation package named project are all options. We are not at a point where we have to get a few months more in before the full cost estimate is something we can say like, yeah, this is something we can hang our hat on for what we need. What we've heard is that this project is going to have, it's been on people's lists for a long time, and it's got so much momentum, and we'll find it somewhere. There's no question about that. And we may be rallying people to troop to DC at some point to work on that as well. And American Rivers also has obviously folks on the Hill all the time. So that is quick update on the project. Things are moving very quickly. So again, we get news every day about the agreement got signed with the railroad, and that's great. But yeah, I just wanted to see what questions folks had.
I actually just wanted to jump in real fast and thank Tessie. She's been leading this for the city for the last, without help, largely. She comes in, she meets with me, and she tells me stories. But she's been doing this largely on her own for the last year and a half, and I really appreciate it. The types of things that come up sometimes that she's been fighting for us on are things like, do we really need a path underneath the dam? And she says, yes. And then they say, do we really need a path underneath the dam? And she said, yes. And she just says it over and over again to make sure that the things that have been important to this community for a long time continue to be in the project. So I just wanted to call out and thank her for taking such a great leadership role.
That undercrossing was in the PARs, so just says in that it's still being planned.
It is still
absolutely.
Yeah, regardless
That's a huge,
of what happens to the PARs.
So you're working this from multiple angles.
Yes, yes.
And to be clear, she's representing the city staff. I know that both the council member and the mayor have been long involved in this project and have been really critical partners to this. Neil tells me all the time, actually, how important it is that we're all at the table, so thank you.
Yeah, and then the other thing I would say is, I know that this is a huge project for a city that has a lot of things going on, like moving City Hall and, lots of things, lots of irons in the fire. And, there was a chunk of city staff time that was written into the NOAA Fisheries Grant. But as we fundraise, I am always on the whole, okay, we know this is taking a bunch of city staff time, and we know that's going to go on for a while. How do we write that into our grants that we write as well? So that's always an option. The other thing is, I think Gary sitting over there in the back, I can't not mention that the other project that's going forward is the restoration of the Johnson Creek confluence, and that is technically about 10 feet outside of our watershed council boundary, but we know that the fish don't care, and we know that the people don't care either. So that is really part of the same ecological system and the same park, and that it's really exciting to be seeing basically what we call watershed scale restoration rather than just one project here, one project there. Yeah, other questions?
I don't have any questions. I have a comment. As a third grade teacher and somebody who has a tank with about 194 alvin in it, I just taught today, we talked about habitat for salmon because we're going to eventually release them.
Field trip.
Yeah. And I thought that, when I get busy doing stuff, you totally forget about things that you can make connections with, and this is a great opportunity for me to make a connection with my students so they can understand, how certain things affect habitat, whether it's salmon or whatever. So I'm really glad this is on the agenda, because now I'm going to put it into my lesson. Probably not this week.
Yeah.
Next week.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd want to be wandering around in the stream this week. It was cranking when we went down there earlier. Yeah, no, and it's actually kind of, we were talking about this earlier today internally because we have about, we're kind of designing a macro invertebrate study because we have Rao Middle School above the impoundment and Milwaukie High School in the impoundment, and to see what the differences are and how things change but after the project is going to be really, really cool.
So I agree with Neil that this will happen. However, it's going to require us to be, forward-leaning because despite the fact we got this $15 million grant and that kind of thing, and you can do a great design with that, it sort of pales in comparison to digging things up. And so there'll be some, it's going to cost what, questions that come up. And so, the Senate delegation has been the primary proponents, and we want to expand that congressional support to the congressional districts as well, so that we have support in the other house and that kind of thing. And so we're going to have to, it'll happen, but it won't happen automatically. We're going to have to keep it out there. And I think it's a good reminder to us that periodically, and I don't know what form this takes, is we need to keep this on the radar of our citizens about what's going on. We can hear Neil talk and we can say, oh, everything's cool, but we want to maintain, support within the community so that everyone understands what's going on. And I think that this will be a source of pride for people when it happens. And so I think it's something that Milwaukie will be proud of at some point. But communicating with the money rainmakers and communicating with the community about what this is all about, I think, are important.
Yeah, I agree entirely, and I think, that's actually on the 14th, we have a kind of walkthrough with the staff for current Representative Chavez DeReamer, and obviously that isn't, I'll tour anybody about on this project, as some of you well know, but I'll certainly extend that to anybody who is, everybody who's kind of running for that seat one way or another. But the, and I think, I think there is, I think you're right, it will happen, but it won't be automatic, but it'll happen.
And just so council knows, when staff's had interactions with the staff of elected officials from the federal delegation, we have been saying this is the priority of the city for federal funds. It's the project that's closest tied to federal nexus, and so it makes a ton of sense for them to continue to fund and for us to continue to ask for those funds. If you ever feel differently, I should know that. But for right now, that's how we've been treating this in the.
It is a project in the capital improvement plan too, so it is for the construction. So we do have a little bit in that bank ready to go. So, and with ODOT working on it, they are improving some of the ramps up McLaughlin. So it actually is expanding up 99E in addition to to the bridge in the restoration areas. So it'll actually enhance quite a bit of downtown near the park. So it's a fun project. You can see where it's going to be based off all the survey markers on the street. They painted all over. They're looking at lots of items. So they'll be doing that survey work for the next probably 3 months.
The other thing I think I can share, this is not my area of refined expertise, but the first round of sediment testing was done in that upper portion of the impoundment, and that really is designed to generate a more detailed sediment evaluation plan that we can then take to the Army Corps of Engineers and the Portland Sediment Evaluation Team and basically say, okay, now here's what we want to do. We want to test here, here, and here, because we only want to lower that barge in there once. We don't want them to come back and say, oh, gee, well, you should have tested here too, or you should have gone a little deeper, one of the big questions we had was like, what are we finding in there? Because obviously it's a major issue, but basically my understanding of what we found in that initial upper middle range of the impoundment was not that different from what's in the bottom of the Willamette. So that's a good sign.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Can I chime in? I'm glad to hear what you just said, Neil, because I had heard that years ago, that maybe 5-6 years ago, that some sediment testing that was done, a decade ago was not that different from what's in the Willamette. So that's good to hear. I totally concur with the things that Councilor Massey was saying, and I love the tie-in to the schools. I think that's awesome. You said one thing here that I had not heard before, which is using the word dewatering, which is funny because that's a word they use over at the Kellogg sewage treatment plant too. But I've never heard about concerns about the trestle and what the drawdown of the water means for the trestle, but I have seen the railroad people out working on the trestle a lot lately. Are those things related?
In the grand scheme of life, no, they're not related, but it sure is a coincidence that they are out there and rehabbing a bulk of that trestle bridge right now. But no, it's not related. But they are aware of the project, so.
Yeah, and really, I'd say like the dewatering is a general term, as I understand it, for.
Yeah, basically it's wet dirt versus dry dirt. So they excavate out the wet dirt and kind of let it dewater, which is drip out, so that when they haul it off, it doesn't weigh as much, because they usually charge by the poundage to dispose of the dirt. And so dry dirt weighs less than wet dirt. So they dewater it ahead of time. They can also check for different things. So,
Well, now that makes perfect sense to me. I guess I thought there was an allusion to somehow the stability of the trestle once there's no water. Or is that a concern?
It is a concern, and that is why we're working with the railroad and got that signed agreement, so that throughout the entire design process, they will be evaluating all of our design, and they will be checking against the trestle bridge for stability and giving input to the design team to make sure that whatever is done is not negative impact on their trestle bridge.
Okay.
The slightly higher level of complexity, just because the railroad trestle was built sometime around World War I-ish, and there are no as-built plans for it. So the question that comes, there's the whole part of the process with the barge is to not only get the sediment testing done, but also get any geotech we need to understand how deep those footings go and what they're in, to make sure that basically, that there's no instability accidentally created by this project. That's the main thing there.
And this contract that ODOT is letting out now, you had these 5 phases. Is it for specific phases, or is it sort of through the whole rest of it?
It is through phase 2.
It is, yeah, for phase 2, potentially into phase 3, which is the construction phase. Usually the contractor will go through that. I think that's phase 3 anyway. It's been a while since I've looked at it. And it will be coming out in January, potentially. It goes through the review process. We thought it'll be a 30-day posting, and it didn't seem very nice to put that out during the holidays. So we got it pushed out to January to give potential proposers enough time.
Well, to the point that Councilor Massey made about, letting the community know, I definitely encourage people who talk, who have friends and neighbors who are interested in this project to send them the link to this meeting so they get this update, or send them the link to the page on the city's website, because I do hear people who think it's not happening after years of more public facing meetings. We haven't really done that in the last 5 or 6 years, so I do hear from people who think it's a dead project. I'm like, no, it's not a dead project.
And those
So-
will start up again in phase 2 when we have more concrete things to show people and ask them about, okay, yeah, this is one of the potential stream alignments, and there's 3 options for how it could look, and this is, that will kind of give us more solid information to be asking, and all of us, asking the community what they think. But to do that, make sure we have all the survey work done and all of that first. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you. This was great.
Again, thank you. And you know where to find us whenever you have questions.
Thanks, Neil.
Thank you.
Thanks.
This concludes our work session. We will resume in about 24 minutes for our regular session, so see everyone then.